Your heart is the support system for every organ in your body. The brain can't function without the heart pumping. The liver can't quiver when the heart has no rhythm. The quality of your life depends on the quality of your heart. Matters of the Heart podcast is a safe space for you to face the true matters of your heart. The issues that causes stress even when you're seemingly at rest. Issues like hurt, pain, betrayal, and shame are things that are buried alive in the back of the brain. I call them undiagnosed heart traumas. Others refer to them as heartbreak, when in fact it's heartache because the heart can't break. I know, sounds pretty interesting to hear, but you'll learn more as you enter in and allow the healing to begin. I'm Datasha Mayo, the execution strategist. Welcome to Matters of the Heart.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome. I am super excited about being here for today's broadcast. Change the background for me, Seti. I am so excited about being here today for today's broadcast. Heal so your children won't have to, right? And so I thought it was so fitting to have my son here with me today, Demaje Mayo, to share his side of the story about my own healing. And so for those that don't know me, I am Datasha Mayo, all things execution, mind, body, soul, and spirit, right? And so not just execution in life, execution in business, execution in relationships, but execution in every single area of your life. And so heal, what does that mean for you? I believe that when you don't know the meaning of a thing, abuse is inevitable. It's inevitable. So when you don't know, when you don't understand what something is and or what something means, abuse is inevitable. It typically happens without you knowing it, right? And so I want you guys to take a moment. You know, it's all about conversation and communication with us. And so I want you to take a moment and let me know. Enter in the chat. I want to hear from you. Let me know what your definition of healing is, right? And so I'm going to take a minute and look up Webster's definition of healing and share that with you for a moment. Here's the thing. When you don't know something, look it up. Take a minute to look it up and see exactly what does something mean. So Webster's dictionary says healing is the process of making or becoming sound or healthy again. Making or becoming sound or healthy again. So if it says again, that simply means that something was before. And so Patricia says breaking through what holds you back. Absolutely. Hey, Pat. Diana says, wow, abuse without knowing. Absolutely. And so I love that, Pat. Breaking through what holds you back. Absolutely. And Diana says recovering, which is also very similar to breaking through what holds you back. Bianca says recovering from an event or thing that inflicted trauma. You better come on here, Coach B. Absolutely. And so I love, and I love communication, guys. This is about conversation, not dialogue. So I want to hear from you this entire time that we are here. I welcome your comments. I welcome your ahas. I welcome you as a whole. We're here not just to talk at you, but to talk to you, to help you break through at the next dimension of your life. You heard what the definition said, again. So healing is something that's done again and again and again. Oftentimes we heal to one particular level. You'll hear people talk about every new level, there's a new devil. No, every new level, there's a new level of discipline. There's a new level of healing. There's a new level of expectation. People like to be passive and put it off to the devil because they don't want to discipline themselves. And so every new level requires a new level of discipline. And so let's talk about healing. I love the song, win, no matter what. Like, really, like, literally, that's the culture of my home from a kid to when I became grown and began to have children, that it was a culture of winning. We win, no matter what. I got miracles on my mind. And when I step up in the building, everybody's soul goes up, and it stays there, and it stays there, and it stays there. Literally, everybody's souls go up. If y'all don't realize by now, I changed the lyrics to songs. And so winning is a culture of my life. Winning is a culture in my household, but it had some deficiencies in it. And some of you guys may say, how does a winning culture have any deficiencies in it? Because you can be so far on one end of the spectrum that you completely miss another end of the spectrum. And so I'm going to start with affection. Affection. Y'all heard what I said. I am all things execution. So what do you think my affection look like? I'm gonna wait for you guys because I want to hear what you have to say. What do you think my affection look like? It looked like execution. It wasn't hugging. It wasn't loving on my children. It was execution. I went to work so you can do this. I provided this level of lifestyle so you could do this. I do this so that you can go to private school. That's what my affection looked like. And as a result, my children suffered in the area of affection. And so I'm going to start there with Demarjay, give him an opportunity to introduce himself in his own words and share with you guys how the culture of winning in a household affected his ability to be affectionate.
So my name is Demarjay Mayo. I'm sure you guys have seen me all over her Facebook page with all her posts, putting my business out in the world. But as far as living in a household where winning was the word you used, winning was, at the forefront. It definitely gave me a not personality, but a sense of like, I always have to win. I always have to be the best or try to be the best or always have to excel. Which, for a certain portion of one's personality, that could be a good thing. But like you said, with their spectrums, it kind of can lead to deficiencies in other areas. So as I grew up, that was like, kind of like she said, her form of affection. And at the time I didn't, I wasn't thinking like it was affection. It was just more from my perspective, like, oh, like my mom, not that my mom doesn't love me, but my mom just doesn't even show me or doesn't even, hug me or doesn't even, tell me I love you or whatever. It was more of, like she said, anytime that I brought something up to her or that I mentioned something, it was, you got a roof over your head, you going to private school, which is expensive. You playing ANU basketball, that's not free, anything where it was more of like the monetary things, what she was providing for me, what she saw was like, this is how I show I love you. And you should know and you should believe me because of this, where, that may be true, but there are still other, avenues to show your love, and not everyone receives love the same. So just because, you're buying, your child or, a partner or whatever, something, if that's not the way that they want to receive love, then, it won't really be, received. It kind of just like, oh, I appreciate it, but type of thing. So
yeah, and I love that, because when you mention, if it's not the way that they want to be loved, it won't be received how you think it should be received. You'll see it as them being ungrateful when in fact they're not. That's not what they need, right? That's not what they want. And therefore, it's not being received how you want it to be received. And so as a result of that, that created some distance in our relationship, right? And so in that, I had no clue what that distance was and why, for that matter. And so share how you processed it.
Right. So I would say I didn't really start to process it till about maybe 13 or 14, once I kind of transitioned into a new point in my life. I went from private school to public school. So I feel like with that change, it kind of, one, it was a different change in life, and then it also was like I feel like once you turn 14, it's kind of a different point in your life as far as when you start to comprehend and understand more of yourself. So I feel like around that time is when I kind of just started to realize, like, I feel like she was super hard on me, and in the beginning of my ninth grade year, I wasn't doing well, and it kind of was confusing to her because it's like I go from private school to public school and doing worse in public school, and the public school work is easier.
Yeah.
But again, it was a change of pace. It was a different thing. So, I'm trying to fit in, it's a different type of people. So I feel like at that time, that's kind of when I really started to notice it, because I felt like, she was, I wouldn't say hard on me, but more like, what's going on? And, if I did try to explain or whatever reason or excuse that I came up with, it was just like, it wasn't really her understanding, the transition of a completely different life for me. You go from private school where it's, only, 15 kids in the classroom, 20 kids in the classroom. And, there's really no fighting. There's really no, bullying or anything like that. And, it's not really a lot of fitting in. It kind of is, but not as much as in public school. So it was like a culture shock for me. So I wouldn't say I wasn't thinking about school, but that wasn't like my main focus going into public school my ninth grade year. So I would say that's when I really started to notice, not notice, but like started to realize, like, she won't listen to me, or she's not really understanding. And as I, got older and older and older, it kind of just made me become distant. Like, and I mean, y'all probably won't even believe it, but there were literally for years and years and years, not saying we never talked, but it would be a week straight, and only thing we said to each other was hi and bye.
Yeah.
Like, I would come in the house, hey, what's up? Hey, what's up? I go in my room, do whatever I do, and then leave, and then the same thing next day, and then there'll be a week to go by, and then maybe when we go to church on Sunday, because usually we always spend Sundays together all day, so that'll probably be like the day that we'll actually like have a conversation or talk or something like that. But around 14, 15 is when I really started to become distant, and also it kind of, what made it even more apparent was with my father. My father was very good at listening and understanding that, one, I'm a kid. So anything, even if it was quote unquote wrong or, not the best thing as, that, a parent would want their child to do, he was still like, I was a kid before, I understand. This is what you did wrong. This is how you can do better. Or, he gets it, whatever the case may be. It was more of, talking, understanding, and kind of understanding from my point of view, where with her, it would just be, no, you're not supposed to do that. And you're not supposed to do that. I taught you to do this and I taught you to do that. And that's kind of how it was. So that dynamic with my father made me even more realize, like, this is off. And it kind of made me more distant with her and closer to my dad. Cause it's like my dad listens and she don't. So
yeah. I love that. And out of everything that he said, I hope you guys heard the key word: listen. Listen. And so while I had all of these expectations based on the execution that I did, that I had in place, that I said, my life and the life of my kids is going to be completely different from how I grew up. And I felt like that was the way. How many of you guys have said the same thing, that I'm going to give my children, or if you don't have natural children, your nieces, your nephews, your cousins, your godchildren, how many of you guys have said, I am going to give them a better life? And so you base a better life on the life that you lived. And as a result of that, they should love it. Right? And so that's exactly what I did. I knew before I even had children that I wanted my children to go to private school. I knew that I would move from the District of Columbia to Maryland, right? So I had these things already set in place. I had saw my children growing and living a life that I desired before I even had them. And so when he began to shift, he wasn't living the life that I saw, right? And so in that, I had no understanding, no comprehension as to why not. And I remember his father calling me one day and saying, you need to have a conversation with Demonjay. He's experiencing X, Y, Z, and said this and that. And so what do you guys think I did? Got offended and defensive. Literally, when he is crying out for help. And so in that, I still stayed in the same vein of, I provide this so you can have that. You do this so you can do that. Still not realizing that that's not what he needed. Let's put aside the wants for the moment, right? Because clearly I was coming from a place of want, but that he needed, his core needs was for me to, first of all, listen. And in listening, it conveyed what to you?
In listening what?
In listening to you and your concerns, what did that convey to you from me? Was it respect? Was it that I cared? Was it that I paid attention?
I think with you listening, it would have probably conveyed to me at that time that you understand, you listen, and that you have some type of empathy. Like that was like the main thing, one of the main things. Like it just felt like you necessarily didn't even care what I thought, because what you thought is what I should have thought, type of thing.
Yeah.
So that's probably what it was.
Yeah, absolutely. And so Diana Page says, were you teaching him how your mom taught you? That's a great question. I wasn't, Paige, right? Because my mother was very affectionate. She was very affectionate, but also no nonsense. And so for me, my ability to give him more was the vein, and this is for everybody, not just Paige. She asked the question, so I was responding to her question. But my ability to give him more was the avenue, the lane that I taught him from, because that was my level of understanding in that moment. And so you guys remember what I said in the beginning, that every new level requires new discipline. And so I'm still looking at him as he was 4 years old, 5 years old, when he was now 14 and 15. And so every season in his life requires a new up level of season in parenting. I'm going to say that again.
That's a good point.
Every season of your child, the people that you influence, the people that you love, requires a new season of parenting. It requires a new season of friendship. It requires a new season of loving. Whatever relationship you in, it requires a new season.
And especially with children, because children from, I want to say, age 1 to 17, 18 go through multiple phases of changes.
Yeah.
They become not necessarily different people, but they're still, coming into their own. So who you knew at 6 is not going to be the same kid that you knew at 12.
Come on.
Especially once they, go to a different school, they, get influenced by their friends, or, get influenced now with social media and what they see on TikTok and Instagram, Twitter. They're not going to be the same kid that, 6-year-old, Demonjay was dancing and was hugging on everybody and all that stuff. And then as I got older, with, in relation to how you were parenting me, that kind of slowly dissipated.
Yeah.
So, like you said, with seasons, you have to definitely be keen on how your children are necessarily changing, and also listening to see, what you could do to, aid them in the process of their maturing and growing and stuff like that. So,
yeah. Absolutely. That's so good. And so as a result of my wanting to be better in every area of my life, I began to seek God in parenting, right? I began to know I began to identify who he was at the core, and realize that I needed to change, that I needed to make some adjustments. So all of the impartation that I instilled, that I gave to him, could flourish. Because here's the thing, I don't care how much impartation and how much greatness you think you're putting in them. If you are not hearing them, if you are not loving them, they will resist it.
Yeah. And to the point of, her mindset was, like she said, with everything she was providing for me, as far as, paying for this, paying for that, she's provided me this, she provided me that. But at the end of the day, as a child, if you're not feeling loved, or if you're not feeling, affection, or you're not getting any attention, it doesn't really matter. Like, especially to a kid. Like, a kid doesn't understand no roof over their house. Like,
roof over their head.
Yeah. I mean, roof over their head. They know that you work and pay bills, but they like you saying that to a kid is just like, that's not gonna, penetrate them.
Right. So, they're not gonna comprehend. I remember having a conversation probably a couple months ago and him sharing that with me then. Like, they don't understand a roof over their head. So you saying that is like, okay, it's just going over their head. Right. And so it's meeting them where they are. Right? Like, literally meeting them where they are, not being stuck in what you learned, what you heard, what you thought was the best way of parenting, but acknowledging God. God blessed you with them. And so clearly he has the plan on how to raise them. And so I don't care what age your children are, I want you to begin to identify who they are and what they need in the current season. Some of you guys are in yesterday when you need to be in today and tomorrow. Some of you guys, your relationships aren't where you felt like they should be because you're still hanging out in yesteryear with parenting. Some of you guys want to be large and in charge, acting like they're a toddler when they're a grown daggone woman or a grown daggone man. Parent them that way. Give them the respect, give them the honor that you too want to receive. Yes, you are their parent, but they are a person. They're a human being. They should not be treated like a child.
And I also feel like parents, because it's their child, they automatically, like, not assume, but like they automatically kind of view their children as beneath them. And as as humans, you guys are both equal. Yes, you're their parent. Yes, you take care of them. Yes, you discipline them. Yes, you teach them what to do and what not to do. But at the same time, like she said, they're human. You have to give them, an extreme respect, basically. Mm-hmm. And I feel like parents don't give that to their children because they're children, when they deserve respect as well. They deserve, to be asked, what can I do better? As a parent, you can ask your children that.
Come on. What can I do better? Yeah. I'm asking you that. I love that. That's so good. Come on here.
You can ask your children, is there anything going on? Is there anything, you need to talk about? And even if it's the worst thing you ever heard in your life, you can't, overreact, or especially in that moment. You can't, because if they're coming to you from a state of vulnerability, and one time, you only have one chance. You only have one chance. If that first time that they come to you and you go all out, or you kirk out, or you do this, you do that, so they're not going to come to you anymore. They're not going to want to talk to you anymore. So coming to them and, like I said, asking, what you can do better.
That's so good.
And if
I'm gonna take that note myself,
how they can, asking them, what you can do to improve on this, or is there anything that they're lacking, or anything that that you want you to do less of, because you could be doing too much of something, whatever it is. And literally just communicating with them. And I feel like, parents, maybe specifically with our Black culture, they don't really take mental health and things like that seriously. I remember I was sharing you a video on it was like a TikTok video, and there was a kid, he was hiding his camera, but he was recording his parents' conversation. And he was telling his parents he was depressed. And his parents was like, depressed? You ain't no depressed. You got a roof over your head. You got this, you got that. You better depress yourself in that room, blah, 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 blah.
Y'all know we say that.
Yeah.
We say that foolishness, yes.
And it's like, you need to take your children's words seriously.
Yeah.
And even if it's not to that extreme, again, you still need to communicate with them and understand that, like I said, they're human. You need to have the same amount of respect that you would have for your parents or a friend or whatever, and treat it as such. So
yeah, I love that. That is so good. And Claudine said, I try to keep an open mind with listening to my children. I've always given them the freedom to speak, but sometimes they get carried away. That could be, right? Sometimes they get carried away, but what is the carrying away?
And also, what is the message in what they're saying? It could be
Yes.
maybe they don't articulate it in a certain way, or even if they are doing a little too much, because I'm not saying I was a perfect kid and I never did too much, but
Yeah.
still there's something, it could be something deeper or you know, behind the lens of what is said, even if, you know, they might be doing too much. And I'm not saying you got to check it. You don't have, you know, there's not times where you don't have to check them.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, listen.
Yeah.
And especially in those moments, don't react instantly.
Yeah.
And kind of just digest what they're saying. And if you have to check them, you know, check them to a point where it's not invalidating their feelings.
Come on.
And it's not, you know, making them feel less than, or, you know.
You're teaching good, son. And I love how you said maybe they don't have the language.
Yeah.
And so their language, what they said could be offensive, but you can help them convey it in a respectful way. And so sometimes we look at being carried away as just flat out disrespectful, when actually they're trying to communicate in their language.
Right. And thing is, I mean, again, you know, you're 12, 13, 14, 15. You know that you're not supposed to disrespect your, you know, you're not supposed to disrespect your parents, but like she said, if you're communicating how you talk to your friends, or maybe, or like the best way that they can, to them it may not be disrespectful. But now there are some children who are flat out disrespectful and know they've been disrespectful, but I feel like, you know, most cases aren't like that.
Yeah.
And like you said, if they don't really know how to articulate it, it might not be that they're purposefully being, you know, defiant or disrespectful, or, you know, getting carried away. It could just be they don't know how to say it in the most mature, or, you know, less offensive way, or, you know, however you want to put it.
Yeah, I love it. Bianca says, as a mother to a special needs preteen son, this is really helping me. I have been praying about this. Praise God. I don't know if you realize it or not, but I have a 28-year-old son with special needs. And I was having this conversation on yesterday about meeting them where they are, not just special needs, our children as a whole, right? And adapting and adjusting to the language and or to the communication, because in special needs, the communication is very different. And so adjusting and developing new communication styles for our children is very important. Demaje was completely different from Eric. Eric is one that needs a lot of repetition over and over and over and over again, right? One of the things he says, I'm gonna take a bath Monday, I'm gonna take a bath Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, not me on Friday. And so we go through and say, you're gonna take a bath Monday, you're gonna take a bath Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, every day. Like, we lay it out day by day, because that's how he processed things. With Demaje, it's one and done. And that's one of the reasons, or that's one of the areas that holes begin to grow, because I let him go. That's so good. Let me slow down right there, because Demaje is he's a very quick learner. He's quick to execute. I allowed him to go in areas where he needed structure, right? In areas where he needed guidance, in areas where he needed affection, because in one particular area, he was extremely strong. And so I just blanketed it all over his life. I remember going into Target. Well, back then it probably was Kmart or something like that. But we would go in these big stores, and he was probably 4 or 5. And I would just let him go. We would go in the malls, and I would just let him go. Like, he would just wander around, and then he would, you know, come back and find me. Well, of course, I couldn't do that with Eric, but you really shouldn't be doing that with a kid anyway, right? But because how his mind worked and how he just moved in life, I knew that he could handle himself. However, there are areas that he couldn't, and I missed it. Like, literally missed it. And so I want to shift a bit in the culture of identifying the holes in your values. What do I mean by that? We all have values. We all have things that we do extremely well. So those are the things that become the culture in the household. Some people are extremely loving, so their family is extremely loving, but then there's no execution, right? Yeah. And so I want you guys to begin to identify your values first, make a list, values, and then things that you don't necessarily value, but that you need. What do I mean by that? So for me, my list will look like this: execution, affection, time, love. And then I would grade myself on each one. In the areas where, let's say from 1 to 5, the areas with 5 being the extreme and 1 being needing work, those areas where there are 1s at, I would begin to work on, because they are all necessary. I'd even add what DeMarge said and ask your children,
right,
how can I do better? Because you're trying to figure it out on your own from your understanding. Right. And so I'm around here, I'm building myself up with my most holy faith, telling God that I don't want to lean to my own understanding, but acknowledge him in all my ways. But then I don't acknowledge him in parenting. And then I don't acknowledge the person that I'm parenting to get the answer directly.
Right. Because they'll tell you.
Yeah.
Well,
right.
Depends on the child and how they communicate, but most kids will tell you.
Right. And then also the culture that they grew up in. Like, this one is going to tell you the truth, whether you like it or not. Look who his mama is and his daddy, for that matter, right? And so with him, he would have told me exactly what I wanted to hear. And guess what? He was trying to tell me. And so another thing, thank you, Holy Spirit, for this, is don't get upset when your children go outside the home. All of that, what goes on in the house stays in the house. It doesn't, because you shouldn't be doing anything in your home that you're not doing outside your home. If you are, check it. In those unsupervised areas, they should look like they're being supervised. Because when they go outside your home and they're sharing, they're trying to get help. They're trying to get help. And so I healed myself in that area to say, listen, I don't give a care how you get the message, just get it. My brother, who's probably on here, I think I saw my sister-in-law, he always talk about I'm jealous of their relationship, right? We laugh about it. I ain't jealous of their relationship. I absolutely love it and adore it, because he can go talk to him about any and everything. And sometimes his guidance is exactly what I've already told him. So I don't care who's the mailman, just get the message. And if you guys get off of your ego and ask God, surrender to God that he will raise somebody up somewhere, somehow, to use their power, their ability, and their influence on their behalf, and you let them, the very things that you want them to have, to do, to learn, to see, they will. It may just not come from you, and be okay with that. Also
be okay with, if they're, I would say around 15, 16, be okay with them not listening and letting them learn.
That's good. That's good.
Because it's been times where I've been told something and I did the opposite or didn't listen. And, if something bad happened, the consequences came. And, if they didn't, they didn't. But, your children aren't always going to listen to your advice or always going to, heed to what you say. So you can't just, expect them to, always listen. And like I said, you always continue to guide them, but you just can't, expect them to listen all the time.
Yeah.
Y'all didn't listen all the time.
Y'all ain't listen all the time. Tell us about ourselves, DeMarge. We really didn't. And that's why we are so assertive in helping you, because we've been there, we've done that. You don't have to experience it. But the thing is, some things they do need to experience. And so I love you. I love that you shared that. At the same time, trust God. Trust God that you've raised them in the fear and the admonition of the Lord, that if they do something different, that 1, they'll be covered, and 2, they'll come to themselves. I remember when he went to college, I told him, listen, God is going to speak to you. Warning always comes before destruction. I'm very clear that he's going to college. He's going to have some new level of freedom that he ain't ever had. So he's going to have to make some decisions. And so I said, listen, warning comes before destruction. You better heed the voice of God. Right? And guess what? I went to bed. Some of y'all be up here, butting your nails and all that. I'm asleep. Knowing that what I've instilled in him is settled. Knowing that my God said that the prayers of the righteous avail much. I done prayed. I'm going to bed. So get out of the place of God in raising your children. I remember you telling me probably your junior year or so in college that there were some times where you would
freshman and sophomore year.
Okay.
Freshman and sophomore year, where there were times where, you know, I might be in a situation or you know, whether it's going to a party or going somewhere, going this, going that, or doing something I wasn't supposed to do or whatever. And it would be times where I would hear her voice, and whether it be hearing her voice if I did it and she found out, or hearing her voice and him be like, don't do that. And, you know, sometimes I would listen and sometimes I didn't. But those times where I listened could have, you know, avoided something, you know, major or, you know, catastrophic happening. So like she said, believing in the things that you instilled in your children and them, you know, actually heeding to what they were taught. So definitely, you know, like she said, kind of just letting not what did you say, like letting go, or
letting go and trusting God with what you've instilled in them, because it's not going to help with you worrying. Right? It's not going to help.
Worrying ain't going to stop it, especially if they're at college.
It's not. And then, like you said, children are going to make mistakes. And so even if they're not in college, they can be in grade school, they can be in junior high school. They got a lot of time to do things. You think you controlling something. You're not. Even elementary school, they doing something. Right? I remember having a little boyfriend in elementary school, and whatever we could do in elementary school, we did it. Like literally. And so you got to trust that what you've instilled in them, more importantly, what you've lived in front of them. Paige said earlier that it's okay to apologize to your children.
For sure.
I remember, you know, we, when I say we, I had a challenge that I was going through. And as a result of it, my kids went through it. That's why it's so important to heal so your children won't have to. And I remember talking to my first lady and sharing everything with her. That's another thing, guys. You guys need some solid accountability that you can bear your soul to help you to not only become whole, but continue in wholeness. It's a continuance. Oftentimes people think they get to one level of healing, one level of elevation, and it ends there. It doesn't. It continues. And so my first lady, she shared with me after I bared my soul to her, she shared with me, you need to go back and apologize to them kids. Whether they understand it or not, you need to go back and apologize to them. And I did. I never even thought about apologizing. I remember I apologized to you and you was like, what are you talking about? Right? But you do. And so Paige, I thank you for mentioning that, because go back and apologize to those kids. Claudine mentioned that she feels like she's talking to a brick wall when she's talking to her older child because you're tethered to the outcome, Dean.
I also wanted to say that, you know, I might have been like that as well. I think I told you this. On the outside, it may seem like that, but they're digesting some or all of what you're saying. Even if it's been times where, you know, which she might be talking to me, or, you know, my dad might be talking to me, and like I'm listening, and like it might seem like a brick wall, and it might seem like, you know, but even if it's not in the exact moment, maybe it's months down the line or years down the line, I remember that conversation, or, you know, at some point what's being told is getting to the child. So I wouldn't take what you see at face value. I wouldn't, you know, specifically say like, oh, since it looks like he's not listening, or since, you know, it's just like you said, like talking to a brick wall. You know, just be patient, I guess is the best way to say it.
And who are you, you know, trusting in? And that lends to what I was saying, Dean, is that you're tethered to the outcome. So you're looking for an immediate response, and you're not getting what you're looking for.
And they might not even know how to digest, or they might not even comprehend exactly what you're saying immediately. So you can't really, you know, base it off that.
Yeah, that's so good. And so your responsibility is, one, ask God to help you communicate in the language that they'll not only understand, but also receive.
And also going back to the point that she said earlier with like my uncle, she may tell me something, and then my uncle may know how to articulate it in a different way. And he doesn't know that she told me, but he just says it in a different way because this is how he talks, or this is how he communicates. And I get it when he tells me. So, you know, another thing is, you know, other people in their life that, you know, have influence on them, tell them to tell them.
Oh, that's so good. I'm going to do that. So yeah, that's good. Tell them to tell them, right? Because my brother, he is, you know, my brother is very versed and he's very diverse. Like he can hang out at the backyard barbecue and corporate. And so he shifts real quick. And so he's talking to him in his language and his lingo, right? And he has some attributes that I don't have. And so he not only can talk in his lingo, but the understanding is different. I also love that you said that he says it a different way. So although it may be the same thing, the delivery, whether it's tone, right? Whether it's the words, it's different and can be received.
Yeah. So even it could be an uncle, it could be an older sibling, it could be an older cousin, someone, who has some type of influence because, specifically like with my sister, my younger sister, my dad might tell her something and, she might not listen or might not understand, but then I can talk to, we're only 4 years apart and I can tell her something in a different way where I know she'll understand. And she know it's coming from someone who's a similar age to her, who just lived what she just lived. So she can receive it better and understand like, all right, I'll listen to him. Because sometimes when it comes from your parents, it's just like, they just talking like they always talk kind of thing. So
yeah, that's so good. And then there was a mention up and bring that back, Sadie, about it being a generational gap. That is so real. Like we operate, there we go. Communication itself has a generational gap as well.
Yeah.
It does. Like that's real right there. There's literally different languages, slang being used. It has to be a simple conversation. Like there is a generational gap. I love that. And not just in conversational communication, but also in life, right? Like we were having a conversation on Thanksgiving and I literally had to check myself and say, back off. We were talking about, of course, y'all know he just went to closing on his first home. And so we were talking about risk. Right. But I got to give him the backstory because they weren't in the conversation. Yeah. See how he like, get right to it. That's me. And so we were talking about risk, but he just went to closing. And so there was a different closing amount that was required less than 24 hours before closing. And so I said, were you good? I mean, I know he was good, but I wanted to make sure it wasn't a strain on him. And he said, yeah, but I didn't want to pay it. And so I said, that's awesome. I said, because $4,000 difference when I purchased my home, it would have killed the deal, right? It would have killed the deal for me. And so I said, that's good. I said, I'll put all my money in. And what you say?
I said, why would you do that? I was like, why would you risk everything? I was like, what if your AC broke the day after you moved in? And you said, I would have figured it out.
Right.
But what you were getting at was we were going back and forth debating in the car. We was debating, my goddad was in there too. We was debating, so she was saying that, sometimes you have to take those type of risks and blah, blah, blah. And I was saying you have to take calculated risks. And she was like, it's not a risk if it's calculated. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, you not that like the risk she took where she bought a house with $0 left in her bank account.
Yeah,
I would never do that. Like that just don't make sense to me. So
I'm working on it.
that I just don't see that is a what's the best word for that? That's not just a regular risk. That's like a bad risk for lack of a better word to me, because anything could happen.
Yeah. And so here's the thing. Anything certainly can happen. Or where there is vision, there is always provision. And so just like you made it to that point, you'll make it through the next point. And so calculated isn't a risk at all because you're determining, okay, I'll do this because I have that, right? And so that's not a risk because you're already in safety. Because you like, if that don't work, then I have this. Now, here's the thing. Use wisdom in all things. That was a real estate investment that I could have did a numerous amount of things if I needed to recover something, right? And so there are some things where you look at some things, you use wisdom, and then there are other things where you just go, right? Some people talk about, do it scared. No, do it because God said. Forget doing things scared, because when you do things scared, it releases a spirit of fear. It releases a spirit of self-sabotaging that, okay, I did this scared. And so guess what will happen? The next thing, you'll attempt to do scared and then shrink back again. No, what did God say? What did God say? And so in that, I shared that story with you guys to say I had to check myself because I was getting mad because now I'm saying, oh, you operating in fear. Like I'm having all these conversations in my head because we are very matter of fact, right?
Mhm.
And so he's like, oh, I wouldn't do that. That don't make no sense. Why would you do that? And I'm saying you should. And, we're going back and forth. And I had to surrender that because guess what? Now I know what to pray for. Use some wisdom because now that he has this new elevation of execution, there are going to be higher things that he will come as an opportunity for him to do. And based on where he is now, it has to make sense to him. And God's stuff doesn't always make sense. It doesn't always make sense. And so I had to back off and say, okay, thank you, Holy Spirit. I see that. That's where I need to channel my focus and my prayers and my declarations. Because we are never, ever going to operate in any level of fear or comfort. And here's the thing. He got it in certain areas where he just going to move. But in that, I can see, okay, he ain't feeling that. So I had to check myself, get out of it. We're not about to have an argument
On Thanksgiving.
on Thanksgiving about risk.
But with us, that's not arguing. That's just, we just debate like
but
that.
I was getting heated.
Oh, okay, I wasn't.
I know you wasn't, right. Yeah, because I'm like, no, you got to get this. Why you don't understand? Yeah. And so I was like, let me just fall back. It's all good. Yeah. Because I know one thing, my brother says this too. He says, man, that little nigga. This is how he talk, if y'all know my brother. He said, man, that little nigga, listen, I love the way he listened. One thing about him, even if he doesn't agree in the moment, he's listening. And he'll take away what you said. He'll dissect it. He'll even get some counsel on it, right? And I love that about him. He'll get some counsel on it, and then he'll come back and regroup or not. But I love that he considers all things. Yeah. That's so important. And I've told you that before. Mm-hmm. Like that is so important. And so moving on to the winning culture and
now I gotta make a point on that.
Okay.
That is me in every aspect of my life. And that can also be something that parents could do with their children. And considering all, like sometimes you might hear something from your child and it's something that you didn't even consider. And you have to consider that and say, like, maybe that is a possibility, even if you don't want to hear it, or even if, because it might be something you don't want to hear, especially if you're asking them, what you could do. And then you're like, what? I don't need it. You need to consider all possibilities and realize, like, maybe that is a thing. Let me see, like I said, like how I regroup and go, let me go think, maybe I do that. Or so I definitely think that that's something, that could be, added onto, the overall.
That's
message.
good.
Yeah.
That's so good. Artie said it's a little passion and banter. I like that. I'll use that. I like those words, Artie. And so what do you feel like affected you from the culture of the home that you had to go and make adjustments to?
What you mean?
Like, so affectionate. We'll start there. Or if there's something you guys want to talk about or hear from us.
Ask questions.
Yes. So like affection that you felt like you had to change how you were affection from what you've learned in a home. Like what you were taught in a home didn't benefit you once you got grown and went in the world, out in the world.
I get what you're saying. So one of the things that like she just mentioned was affection. Growing up, there was no affection. Excuse me. So
and here recently, guys, I just want to interject here, is that he asked me, like, why didn't you ever tell me you love me? Mm-hmm. Right? Or you only told me when I was going away.
Yeah.
Right? And so how did that make you feel?
In the moment, it just felt normal. I didn't really think anything of it. It was more of once I started to be exposed to different,
that part.
Whether it was my first relationship that I was in, and, seeing how her family interacts, or seeing how my friends interact with their parents. If I go to a cookout or something, it was more of seeing that, and it's just like, oh, that's different.
And liking it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so that was definitely like the light bulb for me, because in the moment it was more of like, it was just normal. Like, I didn't feel any type
it's like functional dysfunction. Yeah. That's what we do.
Yeah, I didn't feel any type of way that she didn't tell me I love you until I got older.
Yeah. And how am I doing now?
Way better, for sure. That's another thing I wanted to. She has made extreme paramount improvements in like the last 2.5-3 years, as far as, not necessarily parenting, because I mean, of course, you're still parenting, but she's not parenting me to the point where how I was in college. It's more of, how our relationship is and her listening and, things like that. And I literally yesterday was just having a conversation with someone, and we were talking about the same thing, and she was explaining how her mom was, and you and her were the same exact way. But her mom now has no inkling or no desire to change. So it's like she's still going through it. And I'm just like, yeah, well, like I almost felt like I was lucky. Like, yeah, my mom, a light switch went on something, and she just decided to, get better or heal or whatever. So yeah, you're doing way better.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, that's just it. Like, you gotta have a desire. I call it a willingness and a want to for better. Like, it's not always the other person. It is not always your children. It really isn't. And so you gotta have a willingness and a want to for better. Like, how is it working for you? I wouldn't want to be in his presence and it be, thick, it'd be turmoil where we just tolerate each other. I want it to be, amazing every time. I want it to be elevation every time we're in one another's presence. I look forward to being a grandmother. And so how does that look? You and your child don't get along. They definitely not going to want you to be in their kids' lives,
sure.
In addition to that.
And I want to say that's where our relationship was headed. When I was, 18, 19. That's where our relationship was headed. It was like, it's my mom, I love her, but by the time I move out, it ain't gonna be I'm going over there and stuff like that. Not saying she would never see my children, but it wouldn't be, what she would want it to be.
Wow.
That's where it was headed.
That's so good. Yeah. And I'm so glad that you shared that, because people need to hear that. And that's even a blessing, because at 18, you wasn't rushing out the door, right? Once, the relationship, I begin to heal and, execute in that, right? It's one thing to say you're healed, but it's another thing to show you're healing. And so at 18, he wasn't rushing out the door. Like, we literally had conversation before he moved, and he was trying to actually, we're in the room where it used to be his room is now my office. We literally had conversation about him making the decision to move. And that's such a blessing and a testament to God. Like, literally, acknowledge me in all your ways and I will direct your path. He said, seek ye first the kingdom of God, and I'll add all of these things. What are all the things you want? I want a harmonious, healthy, wealthy relationship with my children. So seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all of these things will be added. What happens when you seek God? You get wisdom, you get guidance, you get direction, you get communication. So begin to make those adjustments, because you don't want it. And guess what? Your children ultimately don't want it. He said he began to see different once he was exposed to it in someone that he was dating and liked it. How many of you guys have experienced something? You're like, oh, I like that. I never experienced it.
Yeah.
And so once you experience it and you still not getting it, you are going to flee as fast as you can. You don't want that. Heal. So your children and then your grandchildren and then your great-grandchildren won't have to heal. What I love, another testament to God is that what took me 40 years to do, he did it in 18 years. In 18 years. So you're talking about cutting the trees down and allowing your children to stand on the stumps where they can just see further faster. That's legacy. But guess what? I want mine coming out the womb. That's good. But good is never good enough. I want mine coming out of the womb, not experiencing anything that I had to. That's what I'm after now. That's what I'm in pursuit, in alignment to now for my grandkids, my great-grandkids, my great-great-great-great-grandkids that will never meet me, but they'll be able to come back and watch this. This is a part of the legacy. This is a part of the lineage that they'll have to come back and see. Oh, my great-great-great-great-great-grandmother lived a life of health and wellness. You talked about mental health. This is all a part about being healthy mentally. What in the world do you think having these deficiencies in your home, how do you think that translate into their mental health? It goes on with them. It then becomes markers on your brain. It's a real thing.
No, it is, and I think parents don't realize like children remember like the most minuscule things. Like it could just be one sentence you said in the car, and in the moment, whether you were heated or mad or not, that's something that they remember for the rest of their life. I remember when my mom said that, and that hurt.
Yeah.
So you really got to watch what you say to your children, and how you say it, because a lot of things, the things that you might think is small, they remember for the rest of their lives. We had a conversation a few months ago where we had a conversation about you beating me, and you said that you didn't beat me more than 5 times in my entire life.
If that, I'm still sticking with it.
She beat me numerous tens of times.
No, not me and Eric Mayo voice.
And my dad,
I'm not being funny. I really don't remember that, because I am a stickler on not, no corporal punishment for kids, because they're not learning anything from it. And so maybe what he experienced was before I healed and gained some understanding, because what I do know now, the revelation and the comprehension that I've received from it, is that it goes back to slavery. And so our ancestors and our forefathers were beat when they didn't obey, right? There were consequences. We were having a conversation last week about consequences. I hate the word consequences. How about discipline, right? Because consequences automatically have a negative connotation. And so I'm gonna let you get back to it, because that's important. But I now have the revelation. I want to share that with you guys, that beating our children go way back to slavery. We want to make sure that they understand. We want to make sure that they comprehend that what they are doing. And more importantly, we want to get ahead of what they're doing by communicating with them effectively, not sending them in a corner, not doing what our parents did to us, not leaning to our own understanding, thinking that what we doing is working. It's not. Who are they? Understand who they are and what they need, and begin to develop those disciplines based on that. So go ahead and talk about what you want to talk about.
Well, it was just that was just the point I was making, saying that she doesn't remember, but I remember, and of course I'm gonna remember more because I'm the one that was receiving the discipline. I just seen a comment just now where somebody said that they 40 and they still remember things that their parents said when they were children.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that was Tiana.
And they probably don't remember.
Yeah, she said, that's real. I'm 40 and still remember certain statements that my mom or dad said to me or near me. That's so good, T. Near me. So even if they don't say it directly to you, near is just the same, if not worse. Mm-hmm. And so be mindful of the declarations that you are declaring over your children. I am huge. For you guys that know me, I am huge. I'm a stickler. I am intentionally anal about the words that I allow to flow from my mouth. The Bible says that the tongue is like the pen of a ready writer. The moment you say it, it's being written down. So be so mindful, be so intentional about the words that you allow to release from your mouth, and also your thoughts. Also check those thoughts, because that's where it starts. Because children do believe it. They remember it, and then they believe it, right?
They'll definitely believe, things that you tell them, even if it's not necessarily true, or if they're not true, it's like the fact that you tell them so much, it makes them believe it, which is why I'm so confident, because she instilled that in me.
Yeah, that's good.
And Eric may not have the same comprehension, but Eric is just as confident as us.
You better believe it. That is so real. That is so real. Eric doesn't even realize he got special needs. He like, this what I got. These the cards that I've been dealt, and I'm gonna rock out with them. Like literally, that's another thing, guys. The cards that you've been dealt is not the cards of your life. Redeal. Like redeal. Shuffle the deck and redeal. You get to decide the life that you live. Literally, you get to decide the life that your children live. You may have blown it with your kids. So what? So what? Go back and correct it now. You still have opportunity, but don't be tethered to the outcome of what it may look like. What you guys have gone through, it may take some time. It may take some fasting. You heard that. Fasting and praying. Oftentimes, when we come to our own senses, if you will, we want things to be done quickly. Well, it took us 10 decades to get there. Now we want them to get there overnight. No, sweet darling. No, sir. No. Fast and pray and have patience that what you say will manifest. It will manifest. But you have to believe it. You have to trust it and not go on leaning to your own understanding. Pat says, ooh, go back and correct it.
Jermaine had a question.
Jermaine had a question.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to it before I forgot.
We looking for Jermaine's question. Yeah, go back, Pat. It's okay. Do you think your mother needs to better? What?
Needs to probably be better.
Needs to probably be better, or she accomplished her parenting goals. I guess that's a question for you.
I feel like her as a parent now is perfect, and you know what, like in the last 2 years, like we haven't had any issues of anything. Like, and I know people who, you know, my age are still having, you know, issues with their parents. So I feel like, you know, the way that she parents now, she doesn't have to do as much work because, you know, I'm on my own and stuff like that. But, you know, in the last 2 or 3 years, you know, I haven't had any issues. But I would say as far as, you know, from my formative years, you know, 4 to 18, 19, you know, I feel like as far as providing me a great life, you know, she that's an A+ on that. As far as, you know, instilling the positives that she did, as far as, you know, my confidence and you know, like she said, execution, and you know, having no you know, not desire, but like being okay with doing stuff on my own and not having, you know, to worry about or not worry, but I'm counting on anyone as far as like needing them. You know, if nobody can help, then I'm gonna figure it out type of thing. But as far as like affection, you know, and love and understanding, empathy, which are all extremely important as well. Those were things that I felt like, you know, she lacked, that didn't happen at all.
Yeah.
You know, from
you're 100% correct.
My whole life until I, you know, pretty much was grown. So again, you know, no parent is perfect, and she had her strong suits and, you know, other areas that were weak. But I will say that the affection and love is very slightly more important than everything that she instilled into me. Because again, like I said, as a kid, the things that I named, I didn't realize until I was grown. As far as, you know, what you instilled in me, I couldn't comprehend that at 16.
Yeah.
So those formative years, that's kind of more important growing up. Although it's all important, but that's kind of more important because that's really what they noticed in that moment. So
yeah. That's so good. And so, Jermaine, I can add to that. And so my parenting goals at that time was to do exactly what I did. Now, knowing what I didn't know, I'll do that with the grandkids, right? And so I've had that conversation with him, with Demaje, that, you know, I'll do better with the grandkids. And that's another thing, guys. There is no condemnation. Acknowledge, own it, and keep it moving. You can't change the past, but you certainly can change what you're doing and how you go forward in doing it. And that's why we're having this conversation, so that you don't have to spend 20 years, 18 years in a deficit, like literally. And so you guys that got them young babies, fix it, please, now, fix it. That's why we're having the conversation. That's why Matters of the Heart podcast is, so that you don't have to experience what I experienced. And so take heed, execute to the conversation, to the gems, to the nuggets, to the breakthroughs that are being shared here, so that you don't have to experience it, so that it doesn't take you 18 years to experience freedom in every single area of your life.
Right.
What good is it for you to have freedom financially, but your family is in shambles? Like literally, like you blessed in this area, but your family is suffering. Not me. It's not worth it. And so go back. I like what Pat said. Go back. Some of y'all don't like going back. I don't know that I've always liked going back, but now I'll go back if I need to, with no stress, no strain, and no struggle. Like I have absolutely no care in the world about what somebody think about me if y'all don't already know that. Like, I don't give a care. That's why we're so raw and real. And I have to give that testament, of course, to God, and then also my mother. You talking about real and raw? That's her. That's the culture. That's the culture that I grew up with. Grew up in, was real and raw. Real and raw. I remember her saying as a kid, listen, she would say, listen, lie to everybody else, but don't you dare lie to yourself. Then y'all don't lie to nobody else. But what she was saying was, be real, be true to yourself.
I remember one time I came home from college. I was coming home from something, I don't remember. I walked in the kitchen, she said, "You getting big, boy. You better catch that before you be obese and you can't see your pee."
I didn't even know that. Listen, she is raw and
it
real.
wasn't no car. I just walked in. That's the first thing she said to me. So,
but guess what? That's what you need.
Yeah.
That's what you need, because those raw conversations, you'd be like, oh yeah, I want to be able to see my thing. Yeah. I love it. But yeah, so I was raised in that. And so I live my life that way. Like, I really don't give a care what people think, or say. My goal and objective and mission in life is to help people increase faster, to provide them a shortcut to increase. My goal is that when you come in my presence, that your entire life changed, literally. And so some folks don't like it. I get it. I totally get it. I am not oblivious to who I am and who God called me to be. God called me to disrupt. And disruption can be very uncomfortable, especially if you're not expecting it and then also welcome it. And so we're here today sharing our truth so that you don't have to experience another day in a deficit. Go back, do those evaluations, look at your value systems, what you do great, what you don't do great, and then those areas that you don't do great, begin to undergird them, begin to cultivate them to make them better. Go to your babies and ask them, what can they do better? Right? What can I do better? Go to them and be okay with their response. Literally, be okay with their response. Help them in their language. I also recommend that you take the love language, not the love language.
Yeah,
what is
love
it called?
language, 5 love language.
Okay, 5 love language. I recommend that you do that as a family. And even if your kids, even if your kids don't understand it, read it to them. Take time out and read it to them so they can understand it.
It's simple.
But I'm saying like a 4-year-old.
Yeah, I get
just to kind of like break it down to help them. And they may even have something for children.
Right.
But take the time out to hear what they have to say. And what's so funny is that our love language is exactly the same. It is exactly the same. Literally. So take time out to do that with your family. And most importantly, guys, heal so your kids don't have to. Like, literally, it is not about you. It is not just about you. Your life, your decisions will revisit you through your children. I remember looking at him and applauding the greatness in him, and then also saying, oh, I created a monster there. Let me help him refine that, because I know where it got me. I know how it slowed me down, in my career, in corporate America. And so you can create some little monsters with what you think is greatness. So heal so your kids won't have to. And then the last thing before we open it up for questions, and you guys have been doing amazing with communicating.
The thing where you were saying how it affected me in my life.
Oh, yes. Yeah. So let's talk about that.
So as far as, growing up not having affection, and saying with the I love yous and things like that, it kind of bled into my relationships with, other women. And it was more of a deficiency because it would, for example, I was in a relationship and this person was extremely affectionate and I was no affection. And, it was a problem in it was a problem in the dynamic of our relationship where it kind of just like threw things off kind of. And any relationship, there's going to be issues and you might not be compatible with the person, but I feel like that issue specifically stemmed from how I was raised.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's a great balance to anything, and any extreme is not good, whether, you know, extreme one way, extreme another. I just felt like I was on the extreme end of not wanting affection and not, well, I wouldn't say not wanting, not being used to it and it making me uncomfortable because I never had it. And that kind of bled into relationships. And it's just like, like I'm thinking to myself, why am I like that? Or like, why is this uncomfortable to me? Or why when I go to, you know, her house and see her family, they're all affectionate. The dad is hugging the son is hugging the dad, the daughter's hugging the, you know, it's all love, everybody. And to me, it's like, what are they doing? Like, that's too much.
Yeah.
But that's normal to them.
Yeah.
And again, you know, not saying that, you know, one has to be extremely affectionate, but just to say that there is a balance that's needed. Affection is good. There's nothing wrong, you know, with affection. And I feel like not getting it is a red flag, or not getting, but not wanting to, you know, express it is a red flag.
Absolutely, is a red flag. It's a deficiency.
If I received that, you know, growing up, you know, I wouldn't have had that issue. And again, that's just one thing.
Yeah.
It could be something worse that you know you did with your parenting that could bleed into, you know, well, even if it's not a romantic relationship with their friends, you know, work relationships, where it could kind of close the doors for them in a lot of ways because of how you parented them. And you might not even think that, because you're like, they their own person, they make their own decisions, but they make their own decisions based on how you parented them.
Come on.
So
they make their own decisions based on how you parented them.
Yeah.
And so their decisions that you hate is you.
Yeah.
Literally. Yeah. And so I want to go back to Lonnie real quick, because she says going back can be dangerous sometimes, though. And here's where the wisdom of God comes in, Lonnie. I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I don't want you guys to go back into any dangerous situations. And so when I say go back, I'm talking about go back in your soul first. Go back and correct those things. I remember when I started my weight loss journey and God began to expose some holes inside of me that weighted me down internally. And he told me, he said, you have buried some things alive. And so I had to go back to those things. I had to uproot those things. It was offense. It was betrayal. It was abandonment. And so I had to go back and uproot those things, deal with those things, face those Goliaths, and then heal those things. And then as a result of healing those things, I was able to go back. And one area specifically was go back to my dad and love him where he could be loved. Too often we want to love people where we want them to be loved, but they don't even have the capacity to give us what we want or what we're expecting from them. Right. And then that creates a whole different level of turmoil.
Yeah.
And so use the wisdom of God, certainly, Lonnie, and anybody else that may have had that thought in their mind. Use the wisdom of God, but I'm talking about dealing with you first. And as you deal and heal first, you'll have clarity on what to do next. Great stuff. Great stuff. And so opening up for questions and answers, guys, real quick. I appreciate you guys hanging out with us on your lunch today on a Monday. And so if there's anything else, you guys have did amazing with sharing throughout. But if there's anything else, any ahas, any comments, any questions, now is your time to share.
And they can be deep, they can be personal.
Yeah,
I'm gonna answer.
That's right. They can be deep, personal, whatever. We're going to answer, because again, we're here for breakthrough. Yeah, good stuff, guys. Great stuff. Let's see if we missed anything, because sometimes Facebook has a little delay. So we'll go back and look at some of the comments and or questions that we may have missed. Good stuff, guys. Let me see. We appreciate y'all hanging out with us. Am I going too fast? Thanks, Claudine. She says, great job. Thank you both for being so transparent. This was so helpful. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you guys for joining. Mitri, I see you there. He said that boy is smart. That's his brother. I love it. And so Paige said, sometimes we are parenting our children based on the environment they are raised in, school, neighborhoods, latchkey children. Absolutely. Exactly. And so Bianca says, how can we continue to encourage our sons, clap for them, but teach them respectfully? That's good. You want to answer that?
I'm trying to figure out, like, what do you mean encourage them? Like,
so how can we encourage, Bianca, if you want to clarify that a bit, but what I'm thinking she's saying is, how can we encourage them to be the best that they can be at the level they're at? Because she's saying clap for them, but teach them respectfully.
Okay.
So I would say, while you're thinking about it, I would say to meet them where they are. Identify what's important to them, B, right? And so once you identify what's important to them, whether it's little or big to you, encourage it. Clap for them.
Right.
Literally.
Yeah.
Right? And then when you talk about teach them respectfully, I want you to clarify that a little bit. But the first thing that comes to mind for me is to teach them how to respect themselves first, right? We do what we believe. And so if we're disrespecting others, 9 times out of 10, we're disrespecting ourselves. And so show them what respect is in this season in their lives, because it does change. It really does. What's important at 4 years old, right? We're learning to be friendly, right? May not be the same at 14. So we need to identify where they are in the season of their life and then help them grow thereby. And so Artist says, let's see what Artist says. Not sure if it was discussed, but birth order also has an effect on how a child deals with issues in a family.
That's very true.
That is very true. Come on here, Artist. And so I had that challenge, if you will, with DeMarjay, because as I mentioned before, and you guys that follow me, you know that I have a 28-year-old with special needs. DeMarjay is 24. And so while Eric is the older sibling, it literally seems like DeMarjay is the oldest sibling. Oftentimes people think DeMarjay is the oldest when he's the youngest. But once DeMarjay came, I had already been a mother to a child with special needs for 4 years. And I was exhausted because I spent so many years, hours, months, and days fighting, and mentally, physically, emotionally, not just for him to have a better life, but also fighting on the inside as to why this happened to my child. Right. And so by the time DeMarjay came along, I was exhausted. And so I was like, oh, thank God he's a go-getter, because I ain't got it in me, right? I didn't understand that then. But when I look back, he really didn't get the best of me because I was so exhausted from parenting Eric.
Right. And now at 24, I don't fault her for that. I probably would have done something similar, but growing up, it always felt like, especially as a kid, since you don't 100% understand, it's just like, Eric always had all the attention. So I felt neglected for years. And it always just felt like, I was about myself a lot, kind of. Yeah. And it was just like, since he got most of the attention, as he should have, I still feel like, there could have been some areas where you realize, like, okay, I still have another son.
Absolutely.
So, to Artist's point, in that birth order, I was the younger sibling, but like you said, I was kind of the older sibling. But since he had special needs, he got more attention. And it kind of got too far on the opposite end of the stress spectrum, where like she was focusing everything on him, and it's just like I really didn't get any. Which is why, now that I think about it, which is why I loved so much when you came to my ANU games, because that's like the only thing I've ever seen at that time where it was just me. Everything, it was for me. Yeah. Where my whole life, it was like everything was for Eric.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I love that. And I remember watching Oprah one day. I love this question, Artist. This is why we want your questions. I was watching Oprah one day, and this parent, one of her children died, and then she still had a child. And Oprah said, "Don't forget about him." And I said, "Ooh, like my child hadn't died." But I could so relate immediately when she said, "Don't forget about him," because I hadn't forgotten about him, but I didn't give him all that he needed, like literally. And so be mindful of all of your children and what they need. Even if you feel like you you don't have it to give to them, be mindful. Like for me, I didn't realize it as it was going on until it was exposed to me, but now it's been exposed to you. And so go back and make those adjustments, right? Like he said, he understand, but even in understanding, he missed out on some things that he needed. And again, didn't have the language to explain it. And I wasn't even present enough to know.
And I want to make a point that it's, you know, just thinking about myself as a parent in the future, that's hard to do. Like, that's not easy, which is why you need to ask. Ask your kids. Because that'll make it easy to, you know, what you need to do. But just going off of, you know, your intuition is going to be hard, because it's like, you got to juggle, you got to do this. And then if you try something, it might not work because that's not what they need, which is why you need to ask. So,
I love it. Teresa Slough, Mama T, she said, this is a comment. Thank you. I wish I could have heard all of this conversation 25 years ago when raising my guys. However, I can use this information with my grandkids. That part right there, it is never too late. It is never too late. Make the adjustments now, right where you are, and then grow thereby. That's why we're having a conversation. I too wished I would have had this conversation. I too wish that somebody would have shared their experience. And so that's exactly why I'm sharing it. Thanks, Mama T. I appreciate that comment. B says, background, I'm a Hoover mom, and I think I clap too much, but not enough correction. I remember you telling me that, like at one point, you said you wished I was a little bit more structured, gave some more guidance in some areas. So that's what Bianca is saying, is that she's a Hoover mom. She claps a lot, but she doesn't give a lot of correction.
Okay. I don't remember saying that.
Yeah. You did, but that's okay. You don't remember, because I ain't remember about the whoopings. But she's saying, but not enough correction. And so what do you say about that? So she clap a lot. Maybe that's too much. And then the clapping is overpowering the correction. So meaning, like, she claps so much, he just kind of probably just be freelancing.
Yeah. I would say, you know, mainly keeping a balance, and, you know, what is it that you're clapping for? You know, if it's something like, if you're clapping for some, I wouldn't, you know, if it's something where you're clapping for something, but there was some room for improvement or something they could have did better, then you need to tell them. And I mean, the best analogy that I can give that, you know, maybe he can understand or that I will understand is like, you know, if you're at a basketball game and, you know, your son scores 25 points, but he had 8 turnovers, which mean like he gave the other team the ball 8 times. You know, he missed 8 free throws. You could say, hey, you did a good job. You know, you did good when you did this, when you went to the basket, but you had these 8 turnovers. This is what we need to do to fix that. So that's an analogy to say that, you know, when you're clapping for your kid, whatever that situation is, also tell them, you know, what they could improve on in that situation. And that keeps them balanced, because it's like, all right, because if you just do the negative, it's like, oh, like mom is like she hating, or she doing too much. Or if you do too much positive, it's like, oh, I'm the best, I'm this, I don't even need to work on nothing. So keeping that balance, like, all right, this is what you did right, and this is what you can improve on. This is what you could do better on.
I love that.
I think that is, it's a balance. So both is needed.
Yeah, sure. I love that. And I love how you led with the positive, right? And then not the negative, but the areas where you can improve. Like you said, that's so important, because then they'll go in society thinking they're great, and people are like, you're not. Yeah. So that's real good. I pray that provided some clarity, B. Let us know. Kids listen to respect.
What's the question?
That's just saying it's a comment.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Do you agree?
Kids listen to respect.
Yeah. So they listen to, so if you come respectfully, they listen.
Oh, yeah. I get, okay.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah. Especially when you come, you know, like, not that you're trying to like teach them a lesson, or not that, you know, you're trying to, not because sometimes you do need to teach them something, but like you said, coming softly, or like coming, you know, I'm not getting on you, but I'm just trying to, type of thing. So yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Jermaine says, Demarjay, have you grown from the lack of affection from the past and can have a healthy relationship with your potential queen?
Definitely. Mainly because of therapy. You know, I started going to therapy, and that, you know, alleviated a lot of the issues.
That part, you started going to therapy. Can we go to therapy, guys? Like, stop thinking it is taboo. It's not. It is so necessary.
And I also feel like, especially in Black culture, people view therapy as something is wrong with you. Like, you're extremely depressed. I'm not depressed or nothing is, I'm not upset at anything. I just have a want to self-improve in every aspect. So if I see that there's some improvement, I'm gonna want to get it. So I'm not depressed. I'm not sad, and not saying that, being depressed is a bad thing, but that's not my situation. So I feel like Black people view
that's not your driver why you went to do it. Yeah,
right, exactly. And some people are like, oh, he went to therapy, like, dang, man, his life must be a mess, or and that's not the case.
It's not the case, right? And too often the Black community, really think that is something wrong with therapy because of the dysfunction they've heard as it related to it.
Right.
It's not. It's so necessary. It helps you unravel things that you've always wondered about. Right.
And to continue answering the question, I do feel like I've grown definitely in the last, 6 months, which is crazy because that's not a long time. But again, therapy has helped with that, and conversations with her has helped with that. And, at this point, with therapy, it was more of him asking questions that you never thought about, or even if you have thought about, it's like he forces you to think in that moment. So it's like, why don't you want to give affection? Or is it that you don't like it? Or is it that, you're just uncomfortable? And my thing was, I was just uncomfortable with it. It's not that I liked it or disliked it. I didn't know how to deal with it because I never had it. So it's like, it was overwhelming. So it's like when it happened, it's like, oh, like, what do I do? Like, and then in the moment, since it's happening so fast, it's just like I just sat there with a stale face because it's like I didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
So
that's real.
I definitely, feel like I've improved on that, and can have a healthy relationship in the future because one of the things that he helped me with was simply just allowing it to happen, and kind of you have to be uncomfortable to become uncomfortable with certain things.
Yeah, to become comfortable. Yeah, be comfortable being uncomfortable. Yes. And I love how you said it's crazy. It's only been 6 months. It doesn't take long.
Yeah.
It's like an accelerated clarity once you begin to get those stimulated questions, right? Because then it stimulates an answer that you've been wondering about that you haven't been able to give a language to. Yeah, I love that. Good stuff. And so B says, thank you for saying this. I feared having more children because I wasn't sure if they would feel left out due to my first son's special needs. Listen, you are in the building, honey, right here, right? And so I feared having more children for, I didn't want my second child to have special needs. Here's the thing. Nobody grows up and says, I want to have a child with special needs. Nobody, right? But it was the cards that I was dealt, and I just redeal, shuffle the deck and redeal. I remember, going to the hospitals, when I got pregnant. I always wanted 2 children because I'm an only child, and it was very lonely growing up as an only child. And so I said I would never do that to my kids. And so I always knew that I would have 2 children. And so when I had Eric, we, found out he had special needs, I knew I would have another one. But I still, wanted to take precautions and make sure that there wouldn't be. However, if it was, thank God for my mom, she said we would have just had 2 special needs kids and we would have raised them. And so get out of that fear, B. I was there, right? Now that you have information, you can execute different. You can execute different, honey. Literally, you can execute different. And so it's now applying the information that you have, seeking out different things to help you, because this is the stimulator. This is the agitator, if you will. This is the jump start. And so be fruitful and multiply. Literally, be fruitful and multiply. Go ahead of the baby when the time is right. I love it. And so one more, to Mama T says, therapy is everything. I love you, Demaje.
Love you too.
Therapy is everything, God. It is, guys. It is very healthy. It is very healthy. And so we have kept you guys long enough. I'm so grateful. I'm always honored when you guys come on and hang out with us. You have communicated this entire time, and this is what it's about. It's a conversation. It is not just a dialogue, us talking at you, us thinking, we're above or anything. We're not. We've been where you are and still growing thereby. We're here sharing our truth so that you don't have to experience anything that we did, or the buck stops here. Wherever you land, in that landing page, in that playing field, the buck stops here and then it starts here. And so make different decisions going forward. Artist said something about his brother. I did want to mention that. He said, I watched how my older brother deal with things with my parents and then added my own spin. I know that's right, Artie. I know that's right. That's it. And so just like with us, you've watched, you've heard, you've seen how we do things. Now add your own spin. You may not do things the same way we did, but it has given you a way of escape. Take it. And don't just take it, but take it by force. Take it by force, guys. And so have an amazing day. Go be greater. You're already great. Just add the ER to it. Why? Because you can. See you later, guys. We love you.
Bye.